Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, May 24th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 101 days, the game against Michigan in 185 days. Today we are going to wrap up our spring positional preview with the exception of special teams. We'll get to those later. But as far as the offense and defense goes, we're going to do the offensive line, and normally they say, save the best for last. And this is a case where we're saving maybe the most concerning area for Ohio State for last. The offensive line, Buckeyes came out of spring not really feeling tremendous about the two tackle positions, especially that right tackle spot. They added a transfer from San Diego State in the portal, so how much has that solved the problem, and how much of a concern is the offensive line still for the Buckeyes? Well, let's talk to Tony Gerdeman about that. Tony is the beat writer for BuckeyeHuddle.com. And Tony, I guess, is the offensive line situation on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 is still exactly the same as it was leaving spring practice, and 10 is everything is fixed and everything is wonderful. Where is the offensive line right now with the addition of Josh Simmons?
Well, I don't know that everything is fixed and everything is wonderful because he is just one man. Is it a 6 or a 7? Is it a 5? There's still so many unanswered questions. What's going on at center, I think, is a huge question. We'll probably talk about that. But the addition of Josh Simmons makes them better than what they were. So that's, they were able to improve post spring, which is what you want. So that's, I guess it's a little bit of a head start. It gives them more options. It makes them deeper, and it gives them just a larger pool to find a starter from at that right tackle spot, because now you're not just talking about Zen Michalski and Tegra Shabola, you're talking about Josh Simmons. And you would think that of those three, you'd find a solid number one.
You would think that with three guys there, two of whom have been at Ohio State now for at least 1 year or 2 years, and then a guy who started for San Diego State. And Josh Simmons was not an all-world tackle by any means for San Diego State last year, but he is he now has a year of starting under his belt. He also has 3 years of eligibility left, so you could potentially have him be a long-term solution if it works out there. But I think you nailed it there, where you have another choice. You have another option there. Where Zen Michalski and Tegra Shabola, they weren't feeling great about things there. It's not a disaster, but they weren't feeling great about their options there. So now either a guy who was a starter in the Mountain West last year is your starter, or one of those other guys has beaten out a starter who was in the Mountain West last year. So it feels like the floor at least is probably a little higher than it was coming out of the spring, and the ceiling is potentially significantly higher. So that's the right tackle spot. Let's move in from the right tackle spot to the right guard spot. That's a spot where Ohio State only had 2 returning starters, and one of them was Matt Jones. That felt like a very big deal when Matt Jones came back, because if you were replacing 4 starters in the offensive line, then you really are getting into, not only are you thin in terms of depth, but also just not a ton of proven options there. Getting him back felt like a very, very big win for Ohio State last offseason. And then behind him, you've got another guy who's been there, a veteran player, Enoch Vamahi, who has played some key snaps for them over the years. Right guard, I think both of the guard spots, but right guard certainly feels like a spot where they should be feeling pretty good. And there is a possibility, I guess theoretically, that Matt Jones could end up being the solution at center if they don't have a center that works out.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how their top 5 shakes out and what they have to do to get everything aligned. But yeah, when Matt Jones decided to return, not only are they happy that they've got a veteran coming back, but a healthy veteran, because he wasn't, he's had foot issues last year. He wasn't at his best, but this is a guy who, even as a reserve a couple of years ago, was like honorable mention all Big Ten. So coaches respect him, and he's seen it all at this point. And honestly, if he's healthy, he should be one of the Big Ten's best interior offensive linemen this year. And that's one of the things that I think he came back to show, because this now being his contract year, wanting to be fully healthy and showing what he can do. And I think he wants to stay at guard, but if they need him at center, then remember, he was the number 1 or number 2, number 3 center in the 2018 recruiting class, way back then, maybe 2019, these years run together. But I do remember initially he was ranked like the number 3 defensive tackle in that class, and he decided, no, I'm going to play offense. And they're like, okay, you're the number 3 center instead.
Yeah, he was the number 2 center in the class of 2018. Tony, he committed on June 17th, 2017. That's Matt Jones committed before I was officially back on the Ohio State beat. That has been a minute. So yes, it is quite a long career for Matt Jones, but he's one of those guys where we talk about offensive line being sort of a developmental position, and sometimes you don't want to judge a guy after a year or two. I think Matt Jones sort of falls in that bucket where he has turned into a really, really good, reliable, solid player for them on the interior of that offensive line. And, Enoch Vamahi, I think, has come along as well. Enoch Vamahi's another guy who's been around longer than you think he has, but he's another player who he is certainly. We talk about the circle of trust on the offensive line where they have, you're playing your best 5, but then once, if someone goes down, if they have to shuffle someone around, Enoch Vamahi is one of those guys who they're going to be comfortable throwing in there wherever they need to throw him in there at one of the guard positions, just shuffle someone else to tackle or to center or whatever. So that's a spot where I think Ohio State's feeling pretty good. The center position is, we came into the start of the spring ball, and the center position was just kind of like the gif of the guy who just turns to the camera and kind of gives you this quizzical expression and tilts his head and just a bunch of question marks around his head. That was kind of the center position coming into the spring. And we saw the same guy at center all spring, Carson Hinzman. He was repping with the ones day one. He was repping with the ones at the end of the spring. The question there is, okay, how does Jacob James fit into all of that? He was someone who was, potentially going to be in that center competition, but missed the whole spring. You have Victor Cutler, the transfer from Louisiana Monroe. He came in and took a little while to get acclimated to Ohio State. And is he someone who potentially could fight and earn that job maybe over the course of the summer? So I guess what are the odds that Carson Hinzman is the starter versus Victor Cutler versus Jacob James versus a last-minute movement of Matt Jones from guard to center?
We didn't hear much concern about Carson Hinzman from Ryan Day, and at the end of spring, he wasn't ready to anoint him as the starter. But we only heard good things about him, and when we talked to him, he sounded like he knew everything that he was doing, and he reminded me very much of Luke Whippler and how confident he was, Billy Price, how confident he was. So he's saying the right things. And I do wonder if maybe there is concern there, but everybody was just distracted by the situation at right tackle. Maybe if Ryan Day, or maybe if it had been harped on more, Ryan Day would have been more like, yeah, we're still up in the air on that. And while they are up in the air, everything that I've seen feels like Carson Hinzman did what they asked him to do, and he's only going to get better from here on out. Now, before the spring, we were wondering exactly what's going to happen. Is Matt Jones going to be a center? You knew Jacob James wasn't available. Victor Cutler basically saw him with the twos the majority of the time. Got the new Athlon college football preview. They have Jacob James as their starting center. And, that is what it is. But we don't know what's going to happen with Jacob James when he gets into the fall camp, what he does in terms of competing there, because he will compete. They're going to continue to see what they've got. But at this point, everything I've seen with my own eyes, it's 60% chance for Carson Hinzman and 40% chance for everybody else. Is at 25 for Jacob James, 15 for Victor Cutler, something like that. And remember, Victor Cutler's still learning the offense. He probably knows it by now. So what does he look like in the fall when he knows the offense and he's back to being a center again? Because remember, he played left tackle at Louisiana Monroe last year. So, it was going to take some time to get that rust off. Not only do you have to get the rust off, but you've got to learn the offense. So does he come into the fall? It's going to be an interesting battle with Hinzman and Jacob James and Victor Cutler. And, how long do we see them? How long do you see? Is it all three for a week and then somebody drops off to guard? So there's still plenty to be determined, and I feel pretty good about where Carson Hinzman is sitting right now.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I think the level of concern at center, whatever the level of concern was, it was not nearly the level of concern at either of the tackle spots, and especially the right tackle spot. So you get the sense that either Carson Hinzman will continue to be this number one center and they will feel okay about that, or someone will beat him out, and that will mean they feel better than okay about whoever it is that beats him out. So I think, yeah, I'm with you that I think the plurality and perhaps even majority of situations here is that Carson Hinzman is the starter on day one this fall, just without Jacob James there this spring, with Victor Cutler still getting ramped up. I think there's still, there's a chance someone else steps up and wins that job, but it feels like they feel okay about Carson Hinzman if he is the guy there. Someone they feel, I'm going to say pretty close to 100% chance, Tony, that Donovan Jackson is the starting left guard this year. He has been someone who has just sort of stepped in, true freshman, played that Buffalo role, wearing that number 41 jersey as the sort of extra blocker, extra big tight end in goal line situations. Last year stepped up, won a starting job, was not All-American, but was solid, and certainly feels like the trajectory of his career is you play that sort of bit player role as a freshman. Your sophomore year, you're kind of getting adjusted, getting your feet under you. You're pretty solid. Your third year, you're looking at maybe an all Big Ten, maybe even All-American kind of year, and then you potentially have a decision to make after that year.
Yeah, and the confidence I think is very high for Donovan Jackson. And another guy that we were wondering, would he be at left tackle to start the spring? And he has that kind of ability. So when you keep him at left guard, they feel very, very good about what he's going to be able to do. And the second year starting at the same position, you would expect him to really take off. So I think maybe of any position, even right guard, I think they might feel better about left guard than any other position on the field.
Yeah, he feels like as sure a thing as you've got. I mean, Marvin Harrison's on this team, so I'm not sure I'm going to say on the whole field, but as far as
the line of scrimmage,
as far as the line of scrimmage, I think they're feeling pretty good about Donovan Jackson, and I would agree with them on that. He does feel like he's gonna give them at least a very, very solid year at the very least, and has the potential, the athleticism to be potentially even a lot more than that. So there's the guard spot. Now let's hit that left tackle spot, and Josh Fryar was on that Donovan Jackson track, where had the year where he was playing the Buffalo position, wearing that number 41, and got kind of called into duty towards the end of the season due to some injuries. Got to play some key snaps for Ohio State down the stretch, and now he's being asked to play left tackle, and this is a new spot for him, at least at Ohio State. That's, it feels like this is less of a concern than the right tackle spot, but it's still something Ryan Day was sort of openly talking about as not something they were 100% confident with. And then you've also got George Fitzpatrick there, who George Fitzpatrick is, I was very impressed with George Fitzpatrick. I don't think he's ready to be the starting left tackle, but that feels like they're probably okay at left tackle. If they had a 5-star former All-American in the portal that they added, they probably would have added that person and kicked Josh Fryar over to right tackle. But with what they've got, it feels like they're probably okay at left tackle.
Yeah, and I don't think Ryan Day went quite so far as to anoint Josh Fryar as the guy there, but every time they've called upon him, he's done the job, and he's done it pretty well. And that's at right tackle, that's at guard, that's as the extra tight end that you mentioned. So whenever they've given him a job, he's done it well, and he's very confident. He's played all over the line. That's why I talked about this spring, how it's easier for him to pick up on moving from right to left because he's been all over the place. So it's not the first time he's done something like this. And he's a veteran, and I've also been impressed with George Fitzpatrick the 2 years that we've gotten to see him. He was an early enrollee in 2022, or 2021 rather, 2020. Tom, I don't even know. 2022, last year as a true freshman, and one of that big group of offensive linemen. And I'm with you. I think they're pretty good there. Could they be great? I don't. Can Josh Fryar be a great left tackle? I don't know that anybody's looking for that or expecting that. But again, he's stepped up every time they've asked him to do something. So it will be interesting to see just how good he is. And I do think the situation at right tackle is more of a concern. But again, how much is the right tackle situation like sucking the concern from where it would also be if the right tackle situation wasn't a situation? Like, how concerned would we be about left tackle if Luke Whippler was back and DeJuan Jones was back?
Right. If you had 4 returning starters, then you'd be looking at the left tackle spot as, this is the one big question on offense, really, other than the quarterback position. With 3 guys, replacing 3 guys on the offensive line and no one completely locked in as starter, I think it would be discussed as much more of a concern. But with things the way they are, I feel like I have of the 3 returning, or the 3 open offensive line spots where you don't have a returning starter, I think left tackle is the one where I have the highest degree of confidence that I know who the starter is. If Josh Fryar is healthy, Josh Fryar is 90-something% to be the starting left tackle this fall, because he is maybe the most proven of the guys who they're trying to plug in at any of those spots, at least in the Big Ten. So that will definitely be a storyline we continue to watch all summer at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Lots of intrigue. This is you have the pieces for a very, very good Ohio State team this year, and then if they end up having some of those spots filled on the offensive line and they feel pretty good about where those guys are on the offensive line, this could be a very, very, very good year for Ohio State, because we've talked about the defense, and it feels like there's a lot of optimism on the defense. It's kind of a weird year. People may be feeling better about the defense in some ways than the offense. What a time to be alive at Ohio State, and what a time to be alive at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We have a fantastic team of insiders. If you're a member of another site, you might have your membership coming up at some point soon, and you're thinking, hey, yeah, I miss Mark Givler and Alex Gleitman and Tony Gerdeman, and Kevin Noon and Ross Fulton and all those guys. And I wish I had them back in my lives. Well, great news, friends. We're all at the same spot. We're all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We are you have added a whole bunch of new guys as well. Devin Radcliffe, Justin Whitlatch. You still have some of your old favorites. Dominic Smith still there, hanging out on the board. So lots of fun friends from the past, and your smart football friend Ross, and all the guys covering the team, and all the guys covering recruiting, and all the insight, all the analysis, all the insider access, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. So if you might be in the market for a new website, that might be a good one to give it a shot for a month. It's we're heading into June, and June is a very, very busy time on the recruiting trail with camps and visits and all that kind of stuff. And the class of 2024 really starting to take shape now for Ohio State as they make a run for the #1 class in the nation this year. So you can do all that, have access to all that great stuff, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.